All right, here's the story, a Baal Shem Tov story. It's in the middle over here. Here's a story, a Baal Shem Tov story. Once the Baal Shem Tov told his pupils to get into his carriage, they all got in. It was like right before Shabbat. They got into the carriage, and he told his driver to let the reins down and to turn around. And all of a sudden, the carriage started flying through the air. And it flew through the air, and it landed. And he said, "Okay, let's hurry. Let's get out." So they all got out of the carriage. They were in some sort of like a town square, like the big old place, and they were building this uh, big stage. And they're all around the stage. There were these crosses and torches and everything. It was all draped in red and everything. And the Baal Shem Tov said, "Hurry, hurry! Don't look around. Let's go, let's go." So they ran. I think it was in Prague. Anyway, so they went to the Jewish section of Prague and they knocked on a door. Someone's door. They knocked and they knocked on the door. It looked like a big, thick door. And they knocked on this person's door. And they heard someone inside. They heard doors opening up inside and a little tiny little hole opened up. They heard latches and bolts opening up. And the man said, "Come in. Are you mad? Are you insane? Come into the house quickly. Get in." So the Baal Shem Tov, so they all went into the house and he locked the door and he said, "Are you insane? What are you doing outside?" In a couple of minutes, the priest Thaddeus is going to speak. It's the Easter, their holiday, when they say, the Jews killed, what's his name? And he's going to fire up the whole thing. It's terrible, the worst day of the year for the Jews. And the crowd is going to come and they're going to, let's go. I have a basement downstairs. It'll be crowded, but you can come with us. Come. And the Baal Shem Tov turned to one of his pupils and he said,
Go.
and he said, one second, please mute yourself, whoever is unmuted. Well, I'm going to do this myself. Watch this. I'm going to take control here. There we go. Oh. So the Baal Shem Tov said to one of his pupils, "Go out to the marketplace, the square where we just were, and go to the priest, bishop, and tell him I want to talk to him." The owner of the house said, "No, you're mad. What are you talking about? You can't do this. They'll tear him apart. You have no idea." And the Baal Shem Tov said, "No, wait a couple minutes." And then goes, "No, please don't send him out there. I'm telling you, it's sending him to his death." And the Baal Shem Tov said, "Go." So he said, "Okay." So he opened up the door with all the bolts and everything like that. And the pupil went out, and he walked to the square. By this time, people were already gathering in the town square. There was maybe 300 people that were already there. And it was starting to get dark. And the priest is standing up there and he's starting to speak. So he's speaking in this, he's dressed in this red gown with a big high hat on it, with a big cross on it. And he's starting to speak. So the pupil is thinking, how am I going to get through the crowd to tell this priest that the Baal Shem Tov wants to talk to him? How am I going to do it? And the priest is starting to talk, it's the Jews. As soon as he says the word the Jews, everybody screams, they killed our Lord and they robbed us and they're taking in this our blood and our this and that. And people are just whipping this crowd up to a frenzy. This is all, yes, and he suffered for us and he's suffering to this day. So the pupil figures, okay, that's it. Obviously the Baal Shem Tov wants that I should give my life for Judaism. I'm going to give my life for God. And so I'll do it. So he says, Shema Yisrael. Now, this pupil of the Baal Shem Tov, he's got long payas on, and he's got tzitzis and a long garment. And obviously, is a beard. Every inch of his being just screams out, "I'm a Jew." I'm a Jew. And here's this guy standing screaming against the Jews. So he figures, okay, that's it. They'll tear me apart. So he goes to the crowd. By this time, the crowd is really getting, big. It's big, and the people are standing sort of crowded together. There's 500 people, 700 people, 1,000 people. And they'll gather, and then the priest, from time to time, he wipes his brow, and he's crying, and he's drying his eyes out. He's weeping, for the suffering of it. So this pupil, he says, okay, that's it. It says, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And he pushes his way through the crowd. And miraculously, nobody notices him. They just sort of make way for him. And he gets right up to the point, to the front. And there the priest is yelling and screaming, we must avenge the blood, of our. And he pulls on the red garment of this crimson garment of the priest. And the priest looks down at him, the bishop, whatever, he looks down at him, and he says, "What are you doing?" He said, "The Baal Shem Tov wants to see you." And he figures that's his last words in this world. He wants to. So the priest gives a shake. He said, "Tell him not now. Tell him not now." I said, "Okay." And he goes back, and that's it. He's free. He made it. There's a big miracle. So he goes back to the Baal Shem. Oh, 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. I'm almost wrecked the story. I almost wrecked the story, but I caught myself before I wrecked the story. Okay. What I said is part of the story, but there's a beginning. There's a beginning. See, I told you I didn't want to give the story now, but okay. The story goes like this. There's a beginning to the story. Remember where we left off. That's the story within the story. The story starts like this. The Baal Shem Tov told one of his pupils that his job in the world is to go around, travel the world, and tell Baal Shem Tov stories. And that's what he has to do, and he'll know when he can stop. He'll find out when he can stop. He'll know. So the pupil goes around, and he tells stories, Baal Shem Tov stories, to different people. People give him money, they give him charity. One day, somebody shows him in the paper or somewhere that there's an advertisement that there's this rich man that wants to hear Baal Shem Tov stories, and he's willing to pay like $100 for every story. And if he hears the story that he wants, he'll give $10,000 that he's looking for. Oh, so this person, right? Don't forget this. What I jumped away from. Okay, so this Chassid of the Baal Shem Tov, he goes to this man, and he gets there like on Thursday night, and he's going to start telling stories about the Baal Shem Tov. He's going to make a lot of money. He knows hundreds of stories of the Baal Shem Tov. So he sits and he starts to tell a story. Okay, and he rests up a little bit, and he says, okay, story about the Baal Shem Tov. So his first story is, like this. The Baal Shem Tov, he went to a river. No, not a river. The Baal Shem Tov went, and he couldn't remember. He couldn't remember any stories. So the rich man said, listen, you're probably tired from the way. Tonight, rest up tonight. The nighttime came, didn't remember anything. The next day, Friday, all of Shabbos, didn't remember one story, not one story. Couldn't come to his mind, nothing. He rested up, he made l'chaim, he drank, he was happy, he did everything trick he could do. Didn't remember one story. So the rich man said, listen, I understand, things happen like this. I believe that you know stories. He gave him a couple of $100 anyway, whatever. And he took him to the to the train or whatever, to the boat, the train. And now he's going to, all of a sudden, the stagecoach, this fellow, the Chassid, puts his foot on the coach to leave. He said, I remember the story. I got a story. He said, tell me the story now. They go back to the coach of the rich man. He tells him the story. And that's the story, how I started the thing. That Baal Shem Tov told all of his pupils to get into a carriage. And they went into the carriage, and they went to Prague. And they got out. And the Baal Shem Tov sent one of his pupils to tell the bishop to come. Okay, now we're back to our story. So this pupil goes back to the Baal Shem Tov. And he knocks on the door. The Baal Shem Tov said, where's the priest? He said, I went there. I did what you told me. And he said, you said to the priest, I want to speak to him. He said, yes. So why isn't he here? He said, not now. He said, not now. But it was a miracle. I mean, I got through. Nobody even noticed me, and nobody, So the Baal Shem Tov said, go back there and tell him that if he doesn't come right now, that it's too late. So he said, okay. Meanwhile, the house owner the owner of the house, is crying, please don't do this to him. Don't do this to me. You're sending this man to his death. I'm telling you, you don't know these people, how cruel they are. Baal Shem Tov said, go. Good. So the Chassid of Baal Shem Tov, he goes. He goes to the crowd, same thing. Now the crowd is like 2,000 people, and they're really just screaming, just all agitated. And the priest is like the priest is just all red in his face, and he's screaming, we must avenge the blood, the suffering of our Lord. So again, he says, excuse me, pushes away through the crowd. Nobody notices him. He says, Shema Yisrael, I'm sorry, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, pushes away through the crowd. Nobody notices him. He comes up to the priest. The priest now is just like, how do you say, vivid, not valid, is the word. Anyway, it's just all red with, there's a word for it, I can't. Anyway, so he's all red with anger, and he pulls on his garment again, and he said, you again, the Baal Shem Tov said, if you don't come now, it's too late. So the priest takes a couple steps backwards, and he holds his head, and he says to the crowd, I am receiving a message from the Lord. I must be by myself. I'll return. And he goes off the stage. Meanwhile, this chassid backs out from the crowd, and the priest goes around the whole thing, the whole entire crowd, and he follows this chassid, this old chassid. And the people, they don't really know what's going on. They're all yelling and screaming, whatever they're doing. And he follows, the chassid is walking far in the distance, and he walks after him. And he comes to the house, and he knocks on the door. And the Baal Shem Tov says, take off your garments, take off the crosses, take it off. You can't come into the house with that. That's idolatry. Good. He came into the house, standing upright like this, the priest coming in. As soon as he saw the Baal Shem Tov, suddenly he started to cry and weep. And he fell on the ground, and he was crying and weeping and weeping. And the Baal Shem Tov took him into a side room and talked to him. And he came out afterwards in regular garments, and he ran away. And that's the end. I saw it. And the person telling the story, this of course is the Chassid of the Baal Shem Tov telling the story to the rich man, right? And he said, I was one of the Chassidim of the Baal Shem Tov. I was there. I saw the whole thing. That's the only story that I remember. Now will I get $100? So he said, that's the story. The rich man said, that's the story I've been waiting for. He said, that priest is me. When I was young, I was orphaned. The church took me in, and they taught me, and I was a very good pupil, and I learned, and they made me into a tremendous anti-Semite. I hated the Jews. I hated everything about Judaism. The whole entire package I accept. And I became very, very successful, a big priest, and everything like that. But I always knew that there was this Baal Shem Tov. I always heard there was one Jew that really genuinely believed in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I always heard about this. He said, and now, but I became a big priest now that I went into the Baal Shem Tov. When the Baal Shem Tov took me into the room, he told me that I should run away and that I should go to a strange town. I already had a lot of money from the church. I should take the money, go to a strange town, and that I should live a life as a hermit until I hear the story, someone telling the story of my life. And that's what I was waiting for. You just told me the story of my life. And that's the story the Baal Shem Tov told me I had to hear, and now I'm free. And the Chassid realized that now he's also free. He did the job that the Baal Shem Tov told him to do. Excuse me for the confusion, but the story came out okay. God bless you all. Have a good day with Mashiach. Now, in the course of the day, there'll be a class, I hope. Shalom uvracha.
Shalom, Yasher Koach Mod.
1 second, I gotta get this off here. There we go.